just tell us to start with, how did the book come about?
It was a collaboration of all the stories that I'd written over the past few years from my blog page. So my publisher, Peter Burns, got in touch about 3 years ago and said to me that he was a big fan of the blogs and he really enjoyed the reads. And he felt that there was potentially a series of books to be made from the blogs. So I went away and I thought about it. And at first I wasn't overly keen, because what I didn't want to do was to have that perception of using the blogs to make money. That's not what it was about. But then I started thinking about it more in depth, and my wife said to me, your blog page is very popular and it's being received very well, but the stories deserve a bigger platform. And she said to me, so if there's a book that can be put out there, that's a bigger platform and it will reach more people. So in the end, I took her advice and I thought she was right. So that's really where it all started, that I took up on Peter's offer of writing a book.
I think the great thing about Ali is you've obviously got the Aberdeen stories, but you've managed to contact quite a few opposition players. And I mean, tell us a bit about that. I mean, you managed to get hold of the Reykjavik goalkeeper, didn't you?
Yeah, I was very fortunate because I spoke to a guy called Lars Gudmundsson who played for Watershai, who scored Watershai's goal in front of the paddock. And through speaking to him, because he's Icelandic, I was able to get a hold of the Reykjavik goalkeeper from 1967 who conceded 10 goals against Aberdeen that day. Now, he's a very elderly man, but as soon as I emailed him, he contacted me within a day and said to me, I'd be delighted to help you. And I said to him, look, I'll just send you half a dozen questions, and I appreciate it's a long time ago, but if you can help, I'd be really grateful. And he was able to answer most of the questions. Obviously, it's such a long time ago, but his memory was fantastic. And I got 3 or 4 paragraphs out of him. So I was absolutely made up when I spoke to him.
Another one, Johnny Metgott, is that right?
Yeah, I spoke to Johnny Metgott from Real Madrid, and again was able to track him down to Dubai, where he's now living. And Johnny was absolutely fantastic, and I spent nearly 2 hours on a Zoom call with him, interviewing him, and he was absolutely brilliant, and his memory of that night is still very, very vivid. So he was able to give me a perspective from Aberdeen's opponents, Real Madrid, in our greatest ever game and our greatest ever victory. So it was absolutely fascinating to see how they prepared against Aberdeen.
Well, the other thing I like about the book, Ali, is you don't just focus on 83, which is obviously a big part of our history and the European story, but there's so many great stories to tell from, for example, the 1970s. There were some massive games then. I know you spoke to a number of the guys, Jude Jarvie included.
That's right. I took your advice, Malcolm, when you said to me, I think you should add some stories here, because there were gaps in the book, big periods of time where there were gaps from Reykjavik all the way through to the Austria-Memphis game. So I took your advice, and thank you for that. And I spoke to Bobby Clark, whose memory is just incredible. And he was again able to tell me about all these games that Aberdeen played in during the 1970s against your Juventuses and your Fortuna Dusseldorfs and these type of games. And I found a pattern, because we didn't ever get past the first round. So I wanted to know why. And Bobby was able to tell me why. And again, we did it a little bit later for the 90s, and Stuart McKimmie, who played in the majority of those games, and he told me exactly the same as what Bobby told me, why we weren't able to qualify past the first round. So I was able to fill those gaps.
And also, more recently, I know you spoke to a number of the current guys, didn't you? Niall and Andy and a few others.
Yeah, so I spoke to Niall, spoke to Andrew Considine, I spoke to the Doc as well, so it was fascinating to get it from the coaching side of things, inside the dugout, how they prepared for the games against Rijeka and Groningen. And it was, for me, that was particularly special, because that era, I felt, deserved a mention in the book. It deserved its own chapters in the book, because the wins against Groningen and against Rijeka, on the night, they were significant wins for us, because we hadn't really done anything on the European stage for a number of years since the UEFA Cup group stage. So I felt those games deserved their place in the book as well. So to get it from players who are still currently playing now, and get it from inside the dressing room and how they prepared for the games, in comparison to how your Willie Millers and your John Hewitts and your Neil Simpsons prepared for games, again, was very special for me.
Without giving us too much away, give us a wee teaser. Have you got a favourite story?
There's many really good stories in there, but I think the one that really sticks out for me is the story when the boys came back from Romania. So I've written a chapter about sort of going behind the Iron Curtain and how difficult it was to play in communist-led countries at the time. So we played against Ajax Pitesta, and we were 2-0 down at half-time, and that was the infamous Fergie tea-urn incident, which Walker McCall and Neil Simpson tell me about in more detail, which is just hilarious. But off the back of that, because it was an afternoon kick-off, because floodlights were banned in communist countries at the time, and that's why they had to kick off early, it meant they had to catch a flight back to Aberdeen early evening. And there was a very strong nose wind, which meant that the flight was a little bit late getting into Aberdeen Airport. So as they were approaching, I think it was Edinburgh, and if people remember at the time, Dice Airport always closed at 10 o'clock, and if you missed the cut-off, you had to be diverted. So the captain came on the tannoy and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry to report that we've missed our cut-off time at Dice Airport, and we're going to have to divert to Edinburgh." Upon which Alex Ferguson rose from his seat and made his way down the aisle and went straight into the cockpit. And he was in there for a couple of minutes, and he came back out and he took his seat. And a couple of minutes later, the captain comes back on the tannoy and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to report that we shall in fact be arriving at Dice Airport, but we will be about 10 minutes late." And for me, that just epitomised everything about what Sir Alex Ferguson is about. And when it was Kevin Sterling that told me that story, because he was on the flight coming back from Romania, and that's proper knee-buckling laughter. Just hilarious.
Alex, some great stories to make. Tell us, where can you buy it?
You can get it through the normal platforms, really. So you can get it on Amazon, you can get it through my publishers, Polaris Publishers. You can get it from the Pittodrie Club shop as well. So those are the places to get it.
Al, you made a great job telling the European story.
Thank you. Thanks for your support, mate.